Hello folks, and welcome to my review of this new Mini Cooper S. Now you may have already seen me review the electric version of this car, which I thought was excellent, but we've now got the petrol car, and that S badge in days of yore would have meant that the car had a supercharger. That's no longer the case. It means that instead of the normal 1.5 litre 3-cylinder that you get in the rest of the Mini Cooper range, you're now getting a 2 litre 4-cylinder. That comes equipped with 201 brake horsepower and a 0-62 time of 6.8 seconds when mated to the automatic gearbox that this one has. That's a dual clutch transmission, by the way, and yes, it does have flappy paddles. Now this little 4-cylinder petrol engine has a WLTP MPG figure of 44 miles per gallon. You might get somewhere towards that on a run if you're driving fairly sensibly. But in the real world, certainly around town, I've had sort of early 30s from it, and on longer runs, close to the 40, which seems quite realistic. It's a great little power plant, but we'll talk more about this in the test drive section of the video. Now the car does come in several different flavours. This one's the 5-door that I've got today. It's got the level 2 pack, it's the sport trim, the JCW, etc. And you can spend an unearthly amount of time, actually an unhealthy amount of time, on the Mini configurator finding the perfect Mini for you. They start from £23,000 for the 3-door, from £24,000 for the 5-door, but the one I've got today has got over 5 grand's worth of gubbins on it. And as I said, it's the Cooper S, it's the 5-door, it's the automatic. This one is £34,500. We've got this legend grey paint, which is nearly black, but not quite. And that offsets really nicely against these black arches and the black stripes. We've also got a black roof on this one and black mirrors. I think it's a fantastic looking car. I know the design has caused quite a lot of controversy amongst the Mini enthusiasts and the Mini scene, but I think it's beautiful. To my eyes, it's one of the best looking of the modern day Minis. I think perhaps since that first Gen 1 when BMW kind of came in, I think this is the best looking one since. Overall, I think it's just a gorgeous bit of design. I really love these little 17-inch John Cooper Works wheels, but they do appear to be curb finders to me, if you know what I mean. They sit kind of in line with the tyre wall, but they're great looking things. Just overall though, what a great looking car. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now one thing that's a bit of fun in this car are these rear lights. At the moment they're set to kind of a Union Jack kind of thing, but they are very customizable. There's lots of different options for those, and you can even customize the headlights, believe it or not. Speaking of the headlights, when you first unlock the car, this one gives you a little wink. So let's have a look at the boot. We've got 275 litres of boot space in this one, which doesn't sound very generous at all, but actually I feel like it looks bigger than it is. I've left my little camera bag in here for a point of reference for you. It's just a fairly normal size rucksack, tiny bit small maybe. But I got a week's shopping in this for the family yesterday with absolutely no problems at all. Everything got into the boot here. There is a bit of underfloor storage as well. That gives you about another maybe 4 or 5 inches. So that's not too bad. And for the car of this size, I don't think that's terrible at all. If you go for the 3-door version of this car, the boot space is quite a bit more limited. You're just over the 200 litres from memory. So if you do need that extra boot space and you want the practicality of at least having passengers have a tiny bit more room, then perhaps the 5-door's the one to go for. It's tough though, because the 3-door just looks so good. Speaking of looks, let's have a look at this back end, because it's the source of much discussion. I personally think it's beautiful. I love the back end of this car, especially this John Cooper Works trim, sport trim, where you've got this rear sort of diffuser along here. I think it looks fantastic. It looks squat and chunky and aggressive, and I love it. As soon as you get into the interior, you notice a really kind of quiet confidence about it. It's a really good quality, well thought out design, and they've used some really interesting materials. And in my opinion, at no point does it go into the naff, which some of the competitors do. You won't see any big swathes of like brightly orange plastic or anything, or big shiny piano black things. It all feels quality, like really good quality. The materials they've used are really interesting. So it's this kind of woven fabric dash. Lots of this is sustainable materials, by the way, but that's really interesting. That's not something you expect in a car. It feels great, and it's like really tactile. I don't know how well it will wear over the years, but certainly this is a press car and it's not showing any signs of use yet, although it hasn't got the biggest mileage on it at the moment. But they usually tend to take a little bit of a battering. The steering wheel, this is the John Cooper Works steering wheel. It's extremely chunky. I'll talk more about that in the drive section. You've got nice proper buttons and switches in thumb distance. We've got flappy paddles here and a couple of stalks. Who'd have thought a car with stalks? Take note, Tesla. Then we've got this, which is the world's first round OLED display, and it's in a car, which is mad. It's so bold and bright and vivid and colourful. It just works exceptionally well. And despite it having a gloss finish, I don't find it suffers too badly with glare or anything. And this car does have a double sunroof as well, so you do get a fair bit of light into the cabin, but you never feel like there's any kind of glare affecting this because it is so vivid and bold. It's like it's there. I'm just going to talk you through the basic controls. We're going to start the car up, which you do with this sort of pseudo key, which is all quite nice. Much friendlier than a start button, I think. We've then got a physical dial for the stereo system, which is great. You know, that's sadly lacking in a lot of cars now. Then we've got experiences, and this is the main thing I want to show you here. So I'm actually in Apple CarPlay mode at the moment. So we'll go to home, and this is the core experience. So when you get in the car, this is the default one you'll find. And the experiences are visual, but also make some fairly fundamental changes to the car. This one's the most fun. This is go-kart mode. That's going to stiffen up the steering, give you a bit more throttle response. You've got this big kind of racing dial up here, and it all looks a bit more aggressive. If you then go into sport mode or use the flappy paddles to control the gearbox, you get a much more dynamic driving experience with this, and it's certainly the mode you want to be in if you want to drive slightly enthusiastically, shall we say. You've then got green mode, which is obviously eco everything. You've got a nice big kind of green fascia design. You've got a bird on there. It all says, I like the planet, doesn't it? You've got personal mode. You can actually install your own photos into this. So you could have a picture of your family or your other car, I don't know, whatever you hold dear to you. Vivid. We've then got timeless, which is this very classic looking dial. And then finally, we've got balance, which is there to bring balance to the force, I guess. So you can really customize this as much as you want. I usually stick with core, and as I said, go into that go-kart mode if you want to drive particularly aggressively. Apple CarPlay is wireless in this. The integration's perhaps slightly clunky. As you can see, it just sticks it in a box in the middle of the screen. It'd be nice if that was integrated, I don't know, a bit better maybe, but that's possibly an Apple limitation rather than a mini one. I don't really know, but it works really well. You've still got enough real estate here. If you go into something like Google Maps, you know, it's fine. No real issues with it. It's just I feel like it could have been incorporated a bit better. For the rest of it, if we go to sort of the standard experience, you've got your speedo up here, but you've also got an excellent heads-up display, which I'll talk more about in the drive test section. You've got your fuel gauge up here, headlights and everything, and then you've got quick buttons for things like your aircon, Apple CarPlay, navigation, phone, etc. The air conditioning you can just control there. That never goes away. It's always on screen. This one's got heated steering wheel and heated seats as well, which you also control from there. And then you've also got the voice commands, which work well. Navigation system itself, I think it's very good. It does fill up the screen nicely. And although I'm usually a Google Maps man, I have found myself using the built-in mini nav on quite a few occasions just because it's so good. So moving below the switches there, we've got a wireless charging pad, and your phone actually clips in and against that, which is quite nice. You've got a double cup holder here, and then in this one we've got this little sort of cubby, which is interesting. We've got 2 USB-Cs and a 12-volt charging socket. Really comfortable seats in this. These are the John Cooper Works seats. I believe it's vegan leather, some sort of sustainable leather, but feels just like the real thing. They grip you really nicely. They are kind of semi-bucket seats. Fixed headrest, but supremely comfortable. I would go so far as to say that's the most comfortable seat I've ever sat in a Mini. And I've sat in a lot of Minis. It feels great. All in all, it's just a really well appointed and well thought out cabin. You can tell that lots and lots of thought has gone into this design, and they haven't simply taken the old one and polished it up a bit, as so many manufacturers do. Okay, as you probably saw by my unglamorous entrance there, it's snug in here, very snug. This is obviously the 5-door version, and this feels comparatively roomy versus the 3-door version, but you wouldn't want more than 2 adults in here, and certainly if you've got a tall driver, you'd need a short passenger in the back because there's not acres of legroom. This is my normal driving position. I'm 5'9" or so, and there we go. I'm okay, to be fair, but I'm not particularly tall in this seat, nor when I'm in this seat. If you had a driver of over 6 feet tall or a passenger over 6 feet tall, they would both be extremely snug, I feel. Having said that, you know, it is a big improvement over the 3-door, and certainly much easier to get in and out versus the 3-door because you've got your own door, so you don't need to do an even more unglamorous entrance and exit into the back. You've got a nice big pocket here to put a few things in. There is a cup holder, quite a large cup holder, and another pocket in that seat. And then surprisingly, we've got another seat belt for the middle seat, despite it being about that wide. So they would have to have a very narrow rectum. You have got Isofix points on both of these seats, and because of this sunroof, it's really bright and airy in here, despite every part of the interior, including the headliner, being very dark. I should also mention you've got 2 USB-Cs tucked away there, which is quite well positioned actually. You know, it is very limited for space in here, but it's not a car you're probably going to buy if you're 2 adults with 2 teenage children. You know, it's a car that you're going to buy, and most of the time it's going to be a 1 or 2 person car. So in fairness, it's probably all it really needs to be, but don't get in this Mini thinking it's going to be a maxi. It's not. So what's this new Mini like to drive? Well, actually, one of the areas where a lot of new Minis have had a bit of criticism is the fact they've got quite a firm ride, and there's no exception with this one. You feel the imperfections in our very imperfect British roads in this car, whether you're around town or actually driving at a bit of speed on the open road. There is an upside to that, however, and it's that this handles like a Mini. That means you can throw it into bends at more or less any speed, and you just seem to have endless amounts of grip. It's great fun. It's very nimble. This being the 5-door version, it's obviously a little bit longer than the 3-door version, but it doesn't feel it. Behind the wheel, it just feels like a Mini. It feels like everything a Mini should be. A friend of mine is a great Mini enthusiast, and he summed it up really well the other day when he said to me, a Mini's a car that you should be able to enter and exit a roundabout at the same speed with, and it does that. It really delivers. If you want that quintessential Mini driving experience, certainly a modern Mini driving experience, you're not lacking here. That 2-litre petrol engine is nice and punchy. Yes, there are far quicker cars available and out on the road, but because the car is small and you do sit quite low down to the ground, it feels a lot quicker than it actually is. 201 brake horsepower doesn't feel like bags of power for that 2-litre engine, but the way it's delivered and the way it's mated to this automatic gearbox is a bit of a triumph. In my in my opinion, it just feels great whether you're around town or on a longer road. You always seem to have access to the right amount of go when you need it. And the way the automatic gearbox works, even when in fully automatic mode, i.e. not using the flappy paddles, is brilliant. You've got so much control in your right foot that at any point you want to just get a bit more, it's there in an instant. The flappy paddle system as well is great. They're really nice paddles actually. They're only plastic, but they've got a really satisfying little sort of click to them as you go through the gears. And I actually really enjoy driving the car in manual or fully automatic mode. In terms of your overall visibility, it's really good in the back. Now, I'm only 5'9" and a bit, and the forward-facing visibility for me is fantastic. My aforementioned mini fancying friend is quite a bit taller than me. He's well over 6 foot, and he finds it a bit of an issue. And certainly, if I raise myself up a bit, I'm seeing a lot of rear view mirror and far less of the road. So, you know, if you are particularly tall, you might find the driving position a tiny bit challenging, but for a chubby short arse like myself, it's absolutely brilliant, and I love it. The head-up display is fantastic as well. I know I've touched on it already, but it's really high def, and it just gives you the right information exactly where you want it. It's one of the best head-up display systems I've seen is in Hyundai Kia cars, the latest batch of those, and this rivals it really because it's super sharp, super crisp, and the fact it's actually displayed on a little pop-up screen rather than directly against the windscreen gives it a slightly dark background, which helps it stand out even more, I think. The infotainment system in practice is fantastic. Obviously, we've already touched on it, but you also have to think about these things when you're actually on the road. And when it is completely screen-based, how much of a distraction is it for you when you're driving to go from one thing to another? It's not too bad. The main options sort of stay in place along the bottom of the screen. And the voice commands are really good and really responsive. So you don't find yourself screaming at the car 50 times to turn the temperature up. Simple sort of common sense commands seem to do the trick 9 times out of 10. The steering wheel's mega chunky, and it might not be to everyone's taste. Now, I've got the hands of a 9-year-old girl, and I find it really comfortable, but you do have these big lumpy bits near the top in the 10 and 2 position, and I don't know quite what their purpose is, but I guess it's probably to rest your thumbs against and keep your hands in the correct driving position. And probably in this car, in the week that I've had it, I've had the best 10 and 2 driving position I've had in any car this side of my driving test, I would imagine. Because it does sort of force you to put your hands where they should be. One thing to mention, folks, is that it is a modern car, so therefore Euro NCAP dictates that we have to be distracted by various bings and bongs from the driver assistance and safety systems as much as possible. And that's very true in this car. You know, it's true of every modern car, every new car. But they've done it quite well in this. The alerts are not so absolutely mind-blowingly distracting and loud and in your face that they cause that huge distraction. And, you know, at worst, they're a minor annoyance. You can, of course, turn them off, but as with every new car, you have to turn them off every time you get into the car if you don't like them. But it's sort of incorporated into this car in a far friendlier way than in many that I've test driven. I'm sure lots of people are watching this and ranting and raving about the price and the price of new cars generally, but new cars now are very expensive, and make no bones about it, Mini these days is a very premium brand. Yes, it's more expensive than lots of its rivals, but you only have to experience it to realise why. You know, the materials, the design, the build quality of this car is a cut above many of those cheaper rivals. Gone are the days of Austin Rover, folks. The roots of Mini were that sort of working class everyman vehicle. Nowadays, it's a premium product, and it comes with a premium price tag, but it doesn't feel like bad value for money when you compare it to some of its key rivals. In terms of practicality, you know, the 5-door is for most people going to be far easier to live with if you need a bit of space, if you need to carry more than just, you know, the basics from place to place. But the 3-door is far more aesthetically pleasing in my view. That's obviously completely subjective, and your mileage may vary, as they say. Now, after those numerous digressions, I should just summarise the overall driving experience of the car. There's bags of fun. I mean, you've got these experiences that we looked at earlier, and yes, they're a bit gimmicky, and yes, some people may find them even slightly naff, but you put the car into go-kart mode, it heavies your steering a little bit, it immediately gives you a more responsive throttle, it makes a woohoo sound and gives you a nice big racing type dial in the middle of the screen. And I just think it's bags of fun. The handling is phenomenal. As I said earlier, you can throw this thing into bends and it just loves it. You've got all the power where you want it, and it's just a lovely, fun, engaging driving experience. I love it. The only downside is that hard suspension, and obviously, aside from the driving aspect alone, as a car overall, it's not the most practical thing in the world, but you're looking at buying a Mini, not a Honda CR-V. They're very different beasts, aren't they? Mini's a brand that's cherished by hundreds of thousands of people, and sometimes people's nose gets put out of joint by modern Minis, and it just shouldn't be, because although everything's changed and everything's new, and yes, we've got big round colourful screens, we've got luxurious interiors and all this kind of stuff, at its core it still drives and feels like a Mini. And other brands have been sort of rejuvenated at times in their life, and they've lost all that. You know, are you getting into a new Capri having any kind of feeling of a Capri? No. Are you getting into a modern Mini and enjoying some of the characteristics that come across from a classic Mini? Well, yeah, you kind of are. You're not going to get out of the car shaking like a defecating dog, as you would have done in a classic. You're not going to have to worry about it not starting in the morning or anything like that, but you are going to get out of it with a big smile on your face. And I think that's something that Mini always try to deliver, and in this case it certainly has. Folks, if you'd like to get your hands on one of these but you don't want to part with 30,000 English pounds to do so, click the link in the video description to find all the latest leasing prices on one of these at the time you click. Overall, I just think it's a fantastic car. They've done a great job with this new Mini, and I think in petrol and electric forms it doesn't really put a foot wrong. Yes, it's got a very hard suspension, and that's not going to suit everyone. You know, it's not the most practical thing in the world, but it's a Mini, and the 5-door certainly gives you more practicality than the 3, although I do feel like looks-wise the 3 is much happier in its own skin than the 5 is. But overall, it's just a great car, and I think for people that seriously want this kind of thing, they want a small, fun, agile driver's car that they can nip around town in and just have bags of fun with, this delivers in spades. It really is a great piece of kit, folks, and I strongly suggest you go and test drive one. Thanks ever so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. Please give us a thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one. Huge thanks to all my channel members for your continued support. I really do appreciate it.